How's that? Good. Thanks very much, Tim. That was brilliant. Kate, thank you very much. My father was the artistic director of Lincoln Rep. Right about that time. You would have been in his disastrous panto, which featured Simon Callow as Abanazar getting naked, if you can imagine such a thing. So I'm going to tell you about something that happened in 1891 that had a profound effect on my life, and I think also the way I work. I feel a bit hunched, actually. Does this thing come up any? Oh, that's better. Look at that. There we go. Boom. Yes. So let's just set the scene. Emancipation Proclamation is 1863. The American Civil War ends in 1865. Karl Marx dies in 1881. Darwin dies a year later in 1882. But the year I want to talk about to begin with is 1891. Frank Wedekind writes Spring Awakening, which is a great play, but it's actually not performed until 1906. It's banned. Sigmund Freud moves to Burggasse 19 in Vienna. He writes, on aphasia, he begins treating the hysteric Elizabeth von R. And he lives there until he's deported by the Nazis in 1938. And he's made to sign a thing saying that the Nazis never treated him badly. And he says, they never treat me badly. And in fact, I can recommend the Gestapo to anyone. Which I think, and I'm prepared to be corrected, is Freud's only joke. I think. There's a civil war in Chile. Queen Liliuokalani is pronounced Queen of Hawaii. Sherlock Holmes makes his debut. Pithecanthropus erectus is discovered in Java. The great Zora Neale Hurston is born, great novelist. Cole Porter is born. But the event that actually changed my life is a man called James Naismith invented the game of basketball. And I can feel this surge of interest. People are like, wow, he's going to talk about basketball for 15 minutes. Please talk longer. He invents it in Massachusetts. It's a very wet day. The kids want to play rugby or American football or whatever they call it. They can't because it's so wet. He hangs a peach basket up on a balcony. And then it's another 2 years before they realize they can cut the bottom of the basket so the ball drops through. They have people at the top pulling it out. It's amazing. I'm going to jump forward now in time. 60 years. Bear with me. I'm nearly born by this point as well. 1951, North Korea captures Seoul. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg are executed in America. David Lean's Oliver Twist is shown in the US, but only after close-ups of Fagin are removed and anti-Semitic references are removed as well. Catcher in the Rye is published. Streetcar Named Desire, the movie premieres. Churchill is re-elected. The Martinsville 7 are executed. These were 7 black farm workers who were probably falsely accused of a murder. This is seen as the waning of the hard's left influence in the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement for the first half of the 20th century was American communists, American socialists. A lot of Jewish people were involved in that. This is their last big stand is about Martinsville 7. And after this, it becomes much more, on the surface, apolitical for a while. It's the year that the first black player makes it to the NBA, which is an enormous moment in sporting history. This is also around the time that bebop is invented, which is a style of jazz, which has been invented through jam sessions, which place great emphasis on huge virtuosity and enormous competitiveness. The idea is to cut the other person that you're playing with. Cutting contests, they're called. And what is beginning to happen in the inner cities of America is there's no grass, so they can't play baseball. There's no fields, so they can't play any of these sports, but what they can do is hang a hoop with a piece of concrete underneath it. Basketball is an unbelievably cheap game. You just need a ball, and you need this hoop. And something very interesting begins to happen around this time, which is a new way of playing which again has a parallel with these great innovations in jazz about individual virtuosity, panache. It's not enough to win, you have to win it with enormous style. And these players begin to emerge who are just incredibly innovative. They can do things that no other player has been able to do. These players encounter enormous resistance from the established coaches who say they just can't play. This is just, I mean, it's fine, it looks like a circus, it's great, it's all very entertaining, but it's not real basketball. Basketball is rigidly, it's about rigid set patterns. We pass it here, we move here. That's how you play it. This is not how you play the game. What begins to emerge is that as defenders get better, these set plays don't work. They just don't work. They break down. And then you need someone who is individually gifted and can take the ball and just do something extraordinary, who can improvise, which is one of the main themes that I'm going to talk about today. 1964, Lyndon Baines Johnson passes the Civil Rights Act. This is all going on at the same time. 1968, Martin Luther King is assassinated. One of my huge heroes as a young man is a man called Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. In protest, he's pretty much the best player in the world at this point. He's only 20. In protest, he refuses to go to the Olympics. He makes this enormous stand where he says, I'm not going to the Olympics. This country is ridiculous. I don't feel like a citizen of this country. I'm not going. Which he receives death threats, he's pilloried, but there's nothing they can do. He is the best player in the world. 1968 is also significant, at least to me, because it's the year I was born. I know I look like I'm about 28, I know. I'm born into a Marxist anarchist actors commune in South Camden. No, for real, that's true. Julian Beck, the Living Theatre from New York, is a kind of avant-garde theatre company. They all stay in my family's council flat, all 25 of them. And they don't do any washing up, they don't do anything at all, which is what happens in anarchist households. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit about the game, the political significance of some of these incidents, and then I'm going to talk more personally. Oh, I've got a clip as well. How am I doing? Fuck me. Okay. Jesus, it goes so fast. An interesting thing happens in the 1980s, around 1984. A man called Michael Jordan joins the game. He's drafted by the Chicago Bulls. And this is also very interesting because it's the height of Reaganomics, or perhaps the nadir of Reaganomics, depending on your perspective. Trickle-down economics is the theory that if the wealthy are given enormous tax cuts, their wealth will somehow magically trickle down to poor people. Michael Jordan begins his career as a Reaganite. I'm not saying that he's an overt Reaganite. In fact, he's never, to my knowledge, made any political statements whatsoever. And they're very careful, most of these guys, not to do anything about it. But he certainly plays the game like a Reaganite. He's got more wealth in terms of his talent than any other player in history. He scores 63 points against Boston, which is an unbelievable feat. But what begins to happen is the rest of his team stagnates. All their numbers decrease. They become less productive. They become less, their conditioning begins to deteriorate as well. And it's only until he starts to work with a coach called Phil Jackson, and he realizes he has to share everything, that the Bulls become the dominant force of the early 90s. And that's something that I always thought was very significant. I'll take a sip of water. Do I need this clip? Let's run this clip. I know you're dying to see it, right? You are, I know. I'm sorry to the people on the side. I'll move over here in a minute. I can't believe how quickly that all went. This is a guy called Julius Erving. And this moment here, I want to talk about, in terms of theatre as well, in terms of completely, like your trip there, just completely changing my life. So let's just run it, and I might even stop it once before. If we just watch that one more time and we'll put a pause on it. Would you mind just clicking that back? Here it comes. We're going to pause it at one point, and I'll try and talk about why this movement is so... There, right? It's my name! It's not me. I wish I could do it, but... Boom, so up it goes. Okay, so we watch it that way, and then we're just on the second close-up. First of all, have you ever made an audience do that? Boom, stop it there. Right, first of all, he's got the ball in one hand. A coach would go insane with this. This is so heretical, such heretical disregard for basketball orthodoxy. He's going up against Kareem, who I talked about before. This guy is famous for nothing other than being in this clip. He's the only reason anyone's ever heard of this guy. But God bless him, because he's there, and he makes this guy great. And now just run it. So he brings it right under. Now this is what I want to talk about, which is improvisation. There is no way he knows what he's going to do when he begins that move. The other two actors, if you like, challenge him to be great. And in this moment, he makes this extraordinary, impossible move. Now, I was 12 when this happened, and the basketball place where I used to train, they actually shot it onto a brick wall like this, and it was extraordinary because we all came back after lunch, and literally there was 100 kids in this academy trying to do this move and failing miserably. Why do I love the game? My father taught me the game. He was one of those guys who was very good at a lot of sports. He wasn't great at any of them, but he was good enough at a lot. He was quite athletic. So it was a very nice way to get close with him. I just loved it from the first time I played it. I loved the fact that there were lots of Americans played it. It felt very big, and it just suited me. I was 6'3" when I was 13 as well, and I was supposed to be 6'8". They all said, "Oh, he's going to be about 6'8", and I stopped at 6'3", thank God. But it made me feel much less awkward about my body. It made me feel like being this size was a good thing. I received a scholarship to Westchester High School in Los Angeles in the mid-'80s, which was an extraordinary experience because I was actually fostered by an African-American family for a year. And I went to church with them. I lived with them. I picked all the books off the shelf. I learned a lot from them. The school was mostly black kids as well. So it was a real insight. I met people I would never, ever, ever have met. And I met people who certainly viewed me with enormous skepticism. But the best I got was, in fact, was skepticism, if not outright hostility. But as my coach said to me, a good pass doesn't care who throws it. And pretty soon I made lots of friends through that way. I came back here, I played 1 year of professional basketball, which is, I mean, I could honestly pick 5 people here who could play professional basketball in England right now. Because it really isn't that, it's just not that good. How am I doing for time? Fuck me, 2 minutes. The guys that I played with on the team when I came back were extraordinary. I played on a team called the North London Hawks, and this is important to me as well. Every single person on that team, including myself, had left school at 15. Not one of us had a single GCSE or O-level. And we played on this team, and yet the books that got passed around, Karl Marx, C.L.R. James, Frantz Fanon, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. Of that team that I played with, one guy is now a professor of political science and African history at SOAS. One guy is a classical guitarist and is also a teacher at a very prestigious music academy in Amsterdam. And no less than 3 barristers came out of that team. We had all been failed by our schools, all of us. That bus ride used to be extraordinary. The ideas that were bouncing back and forth, the jokes that were bouncing back and forth were fantastic. It changed my life. We were also pulled up. I remember being pulled up twice by the cops within an hour, which was interesting. As I talked to these guys on the team, they were like, this is just a day-to-day. This absolutely happens to us all the time. So that was very interesting, having that kind of insight into it. How does it affect my writing? Well, number one, if it's not going to hold the guys on my team, they're the benchmark. If they're not bored, then it's good. And also, again, this sense of improvisation, this sense of, even when you're writing, this sense of the best writing I've ever done, the writing I'm most proud of, always surprised me. I didn't plan it, it just suddenly, boom, it just came out of me, and it's on the page before I've had a chance to delete it. So, how am I doing now? Have I done? Oh, yeah, I know, you're gutted, aren't you? You want me to talk more about basketball, I can tell. So that was a transformative moment, much like Kate's, much like Tim's. And art has to bring people together. It's a ritual that makes friends out of strangers. So thank you very much. Thank you.